Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the podcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the podcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast where I bring you the best and the brightest from everything. And I'm thrilled to welcome my guest today, a man who needs no introduction, but I'll do it anyway. Filmmaker, actor, author, comedian, podcaster, New Jersey's own Kevin Smith. Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
What I love about the podcast, Adam, is that you put your name into the title. That's what Smodcast was when I started Smodcast with Mosier back in 2007. February 2007 is when I got into the podcasting game. And I love that you put I love it's podcast. You know what I'm saying? If you don't celebrate yourself in this life, who the hell is going to celebrate you? You can't expect others to celebrate you if you can't celebrate yourself first. So some people may look at people like us and be like, you arrogant dicks. Not at all. We're honoring ourselves and what we built, man. That's cool.
Well, people actually look at me and they always say I have a face for radio, and that's when I went into podcasting, Kevin Smith. But let's get into it. First again.
Hey, man, I'm Silent Bob, so I don't even have a voice for movies, let alone a face for radio.
So let's get into it. First, I want to just set the stage here. I'm 43 years old. I've grown up with your films from Clerks to Mallrats, and one of my favorites, Chasing Amy. And I always say that Zack and Miri Make a Porno is a way underrated film. Like it just kind of... It flies under the radar.
It came out on Halloween, the year it came out, which I don't want to say it was Halloween 2008. And like, I remember the opening day, it made like $2 million. And we were like, oh my God, what the hell happened? And then it wound up making $10 million for the weekend, which was suitable. But it did fly. It was a sleeper movie, to say the very least, which when the movie comes out, as the filmmaker, you're bummed because you want the whole world to embrace it. But I've had a career where the stuff I've had when it's come out doesn't really do anything. It connects later on. Mallrats being the prime example of that. And Zack and Miri was absolutely another one of those films where it came out. Some people who loved it. A lot of people never heard of it. But for the next 10 years, people have been like, I found Zack and Miri. Like, what a great movie. So you get this underdog vote at the end of the day that works out nicely too.
And it's also a great intro for a lot of people to Seth Rogen, relatively still early in his career. But there is a movie that means so much to me, and that's Dogma. And I want to thank you for putting one of my idols, and I know yours, George Carlin, on a big screen. And for me, George Carlin is one of my earliest memories of childhood. I remember in sleepaway camp, I was 10, 11 years old, having cassette tapes, listening to the old George Carlin sets. And a 10, 11-year-old listening to that dirty old man curse. And he taught me how to curse. And he taught me, it was a sense of humor. He said, fuck you, Evel Knievel. I'm getting in the plane. You could get on the plane. I mean, that's the foundation of my humor, George Carlin. Yeah. And it also connected my dad and I, who love George Carlin as well.
Same here. That was I don't know, maybe it's not for everybody, but it sounds like it's for you and me. Carlin was a gift passed on to us by our fathers. Like sometimes you watched in movies or TV shows where there's a ceremonial bonding with father and son where they share a beer for the first time or whatever. That was never going to happen in my world. My version of that in my world, and sounds like yours, was my dad giving me class clown and being like, you listen to this with your headphones on. You don't let your mother hear you listening to this.
No,
this
dirty.
like bond that I had with my dad where suddenly it was like, we're in on something, you know, and then you're like, what could this be? And then you listen to it and you realize like what this, you know, older influence in your life, in my case, my dad, in your case, your dad, was trusting us with. Essentially, they were saying, you can handle this. This grown-up stuff, and not just because they use
you're ready for it.
But they're talking about concepts that are beyond you, but I feel you can handle it. I recognize that now as a parent, the things that I pass on to my kid and be like, I think you can handle this. And you're hopeful when you pass it on because you want to see your kid embrace it too. Like I embraced Carlin, like you embraced Carlin. Could you imagine if my father had given me the gift of Carlin and I was like, he's all right. My father would have been brokenhearted.
That's it. But imagine you give your kid Dice. Imagine you give your kid Dice Clay. That's a different story. You'd be taken out back.
Exactly. So I don't know if it's the same anymore. Maybe it is with current day comics and fans and their children. Perhaps somewhere, there's a John Mulaney fan handing down one of John's concerts to a 9-year-old and being like, don't let your mother hear you listening to this. But that was so important for like, I'm not Jewish, but that was kind of my dad's version of like, today you are a man, That was my George Carlin bar mitzvah. Like, you're no longer a boy. You're an adult. You can handle this.
You can handle
it. He girded me just like he girded you for battle in the real world. Like having George Carlin as an early influence led us to what we do. It's not a secret. There's no mystery as to why we're in front of people talking. You trace it back to that moment with Carlin. Be like, I like what this guy's saying. He's smart. He's funny. I want to be like that. That's what I thought my whole life. I said, I would love to be like this guy. Smart, funny, and he curses for a living. And I got
So let me ask you this. You have an opportunity to work with him. You're working with one of your heroes. What is that huge lesson that you took away from your intimate time working with George?
George disabused me of my faith that, I didn't choose. I was given at birth by my family. My parents raised me Catholic. George was a legendarily lapsed Catholic, and a lot of his comedy had a lot of Catholicism roots, which, so much so when I met him, it was to talk about dogma. He came and sat down with a script, and I was like, "Did you read it?" He goes, "Yeah." He's like, "I'd like to talk to you about the script." I was like, "You could see you're a big influence on it." He goes, "Oh yeah. In some places, I feel like I should be getting co-writing credit." So he recognized that I've had an impact on you, in your sense of humor. So meeting him, like, this was the smartest man I'd ever known in my life. Still to this day, I think the wisest man I ever knew. We're making Dogma. Dogma's about being Catholic. And, I was a struggling Catholic at that point. And at one point we were between takes and, we were bullshitting, just talking. That was the thing I loved about George is you could have a conversation with him. It wasn't like him constantly working a routine at you. You just sit there and talk to him like we're talking. And so he asked me at one point on set, he goes, "You really believe in this stuff still, don't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do. You don't?" And he goes, "No, I'm smarter than that." And that was kind of the moment for me where it started to break. Like I had just been raised to believe in Catholicism.
That's all you knew.
It's all I knew. Like, it's so weird because there was a moment when I was 6 when I was like, "Hey man, John Kovic says there's no such thing as Santa Claus." And my parents were like, "Sit down, we got to tell you something." And they tell you like, there's no Santa Claus. Hopefully, Adam, you knew. And then the next,
you're ruining it for me.
I know, my bad. The next thing you say as a Catholic kid is like, "Well, what about God?" And with the utmost assurity in their voices and faces, they were like, "Well, God's real. Santa Claus, that's the fake thing." George kind of started that moment for me in adulthood with Catholicism, where suddenly there was somebody older than me, smarter than me, who I respected, who was like, "Are you serious with this?" Like all the adults in my life had always been like, "Well, this is the truth. There are angels and all this stuff happens in the Bible." And, it wasn't until I was like 28, 29 years old, 28, working with George Carlin, when suddenly that started to crack, where I'm like, "Oh my God, I hadn't thought about it." Maybe, or I did think about it with Dogma, but Dogma was my way to like work through that faith. While we were making the movie, I think that was when I kind of let go of that faith. And I'm not, saying I'm smarter than other people and whatnot. Truly, there are moments where I look at people of great faith who still hold their faith, and I'm like, wow, I remember what that was like. Like there's something nice about that kind of assurance that what's going to happen when the rest of the world doesn't after we all pass and stuff. And then there are moments like Friday where I'm like, thank God I'm not a religious person. So
I mean, it's unbelievable, and it's so not funny. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. All over social media, people are repurposing the old George Carlin bit around abortion. I'm like, holy fucking shit. He was so spot on 20 years ago when he did that.
Absolutely. But George is one of those artists that you can interpret him for both sides of an argument in many cases, though not on abortion. On abortion, he was pretty damn clear. I'm telling you, getting to just hang out with the dude on set, getting to, never mind, hey, I actually grew up because I worked with George Carlin. Being able to like just listen to him talk, hear him speak his mind when he wasn't in performance mode. Rare gifts, man. I chose wisely early in my career. A lot of people in my position would have chose like, what's going to make me more famous? What's going to make me more money? What's going to get me the big jobs? I was always like, what's going to allow me to hang out with the people who influenced me? People who like made me want to do what I do in the first place. And so George was an excellent example of that. That in the moment, I remember like Miramax being like, go for somebody different. Like George Carlin's old. Who cares?
George Carlin, a priest. I mean, that's typecasting.
George
you can't
Carlin
get better.
As Cardinal Glick was like some of the best maybe the best casting I've ever done in my life.
And it's spot on. I mean, thank you so much for sharing that story. And I'm always impressed how you are a master of so many different things. You are a master filmmaker.
Not a master, Adam. Like jack of all trades, definitely master of none. If a master of anything, masturbator only.
I mean, I literally had that in my head, and I was going to say it. I'm like, do I say it to Kevin Smith? Is he going to make that joke? Do I got to make that awful dad joke? And you went there, so thank you.
I will make that awful dad joke, for heaven's sake. I've been doing it my whole career for whatnot.
I know, and I feel like I've earned the right. I have two little ones. I have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old. You're a father, and I wear that badge proudly, that stupid dad joke badge. I'll drop them multiple times. I don't give a shit.
You know what was crazy is I remember when Clerks came out, there was a review in Entertainment Weekly.
What movie?
Clerks. This movie
Never heard of it. Never heard of it.
Very small black and white movie nobody knows. But it comes out and Owen Gleiberman reviews it in Entertainment Weekly. And he gives it like a B+, which I thought was a pretty solid grade, maybe a B-. But
I'll take that in school.
He goes, this is what a sitcom is going to sound like in 10 years. And I remember being insulted, being like, no way, man. Like, no way. He wasn't wrong. And B, like all the shit that used to be edgy that I would talk about is literally now just dad jokes. Used to be the edge, Adam.
Like Two Broke Girls.
Razor's edge, man. And now it's just like every time I crack wise, somebody's like, that's a very cute dad joke. And I'm like, oh.
So I had a question. I had a question where I was going here, but you do a lot of stuff here. Where do you find the confidence to keep all of those trains moving together, all those pieces? This is a productivity type of question here. How do you keep all that shit? What
a great question. And it's not creativity, it's desperation. Behind it all is this desperation to get it all done before I go toes up. Like, I had the heart attack scare 4 years.
Yeah, you talked about it on Rogan. We're not going there.
But because of that, I was always just like, let's do a bunch of things. And now I realize, I'm living on borrowed time. Like, act accordingly. So all these dopey dreams I've always had is like, one day we'll get to this. One day we'll get to this. Now I expedite everything where I'm like, we'll get to it soon because you don't know how much time you have. So there's a desperation, I think, not the desperation I think the internet would point to be like, you're desperate to be relevant. Not at all. There's more of a desperation to spit it all out before I drop dead. And that's cool because that keeps me occupied. I don't take vacations. I don't really have downtime. It's not like he went off the grid to do coke for like 2 months.
You would die in that case.
Yeah, no doubt. Most fun like that I have is waking up every day and being like, ooh, what do we want to make? What will we make? How long will that take? And so I float a lot of boats, spin a lot of plates, and some of them work out and some of them don't. But as they work out, that's where you put your attention. And then you keep spinning the others, until you could get over there and then give you your full attention. But the drawback to that is none of it will be like Pulp Fiction or Quentin Tarantino good. It'll be Kevin Smith good, which is good enough. That's been the leitmotif
for most of us.
That's good enough, man. Good enough gets the job done. Going for brilliance, sometimes you never finish, but good enough, you'll get the job done. And consistency and making as much as possible. I mean, maybe some people would argue over quality over quantity, but in order to get it all out in this lifetime before I drop dead, and I'm closer to the end now to the beginning, I'm all about the quantity. Fuck quality. Quality gets decided by the audience.
The podcast is brought to you in partnership with Vincere, the recruitment operating system, the all-in-one tech platform purposely built for recruitment and staffing to unify your front, middle, and back office operations. Vincere is designed by recruiters for recruiters. Both the company and the platform are the unique creations of successful recruiters who sold their business, saw a need for a better recruitment tech, and made it happen. And if you're looking to upgrade your recruitment tech and give your recruiters a new modern operating system, visit vincere.io/podcast. That's vincere.io/POZCAST for an exclusive offer. Thanks. So talking about getting shit out here, nice logical transition. Let's talk about Killroy. And before we talk about Killroy, I want to make sure I heard this soundbite correctly when I was doing my research.
Yeah.
Did you have a dog named Killroy?
Mm-mm.
No, I heard that. I thought I heard that in the Rogan interview.
No, I had a dog named Mulder, Scully and Mulder, because I was
right
big
from X-Files.
And we had a Louie. And a Marty, but never a Killroy. I should, though, because Killroy has been such a big part of my life, particularly resulting with like, hey, this is going to be the first movie released as an NFT.
Yeah. So why release it as an NFT?
The producer of my flick, David Shapiro, is a big fan of the medium, big crypto guy, big NFT guy. So early on in our relationship, because Killroy goes back to pre-heart attack, he had been like one of the first voices in my world to be like, do you know crypto? Before everyone else was doing it and stuff. So David was very into the field. And so we're making this movie, and it's a low budget movie. It wasn't intended to be like, this is going to, go to Warner Brothers. The idea was we were making a student film, a series of student films with the Ringling College of Art and Design kids down in Sarasota. And instead of making just shorts, we would make these chapters, put them together into a movie so they could see what it was like to make a movie, not just like a short film. So we had this thing that was paid for, David had paid for and whatnot, and, inexpensive. And we had two choices. Well, there was no two choices. This was one choice. Maybe we take it out on the festival route. Maybe somebody buys it. We go the traditional way that I went with Clerks. But since David is into the field, I asked him, I was like, hey, man, in a Web3 world, has anyone ever released a movie as an NFT? And his eyes lit up. He was like, no. And I was like, well,
tell me more.
It's your movie as well as mine. Like, is that something that you'd want to be interested in? Like, look, I know this much. First one through the door, don't get rich. He takes all the bullets and shit. So you wouldn't be doing this to get fucking rich. You'd be doing it because sooner or later, somebody's going to be the first movie minted as an NFT. And that could literally be us. It's ours for the taking with a film that we don't really have a concrete plan for other than the traditional route. What if we went the untraditional route? If I made Clerks today, I'd probably be thinking about this rather than the traditional route. So what if we tried this? And David was like for it. If I'd made this movie with a studio, they would have been like, you're out of your mind. But because my producer was a fan of crypto, because he was a big NFT collector, he was like, this could be a big step forward. Like, let's look into it. So our first idea was we're going to auction it to the highest bidder, and then
as a whole movie,
you take the flick, you win it. The same way that the Wu-Tang had auctioned off.
I just gonna say Wu-Tang, the Wu-Tang album. Yep.
Yes, and our feeling was like, not only do you have the movie and it's yours as an NFT, but you have the movie in the real world. So if you want to release it, you can, and we'll give you all the help to do that and stuff like that. So you become like an instant distributor or something. So Secret Network, the folks at Secret Labs and Legendale, they reached out to us. They had done this like really great NFT thing with Quentin and Pulp Fiction and have been very successful. They're like, we're looking for another film thing to do. This is like kind of up our alley. Don't do it as one auction to one person. Let us do a series of NFTs. We could be creative with this. So they came up with this plan of doing 5,555 NFTs, which have the movie in its own piece of generative art. And I was like, well, if that's the case, can we let everybody own their own Killroy that comes with? And they were like, absolutely, which was really cool.
Sure, cool.
So at that point, I was like, great. Person who buys the NFT has a movie. which is essentially like the steelbook version of a movie. Sometimes you buy a steelbook in the DVD store, costs a little bit more because it's like in a metal
collector's item. Yep.
Bells and whistles. Same thing here. You get the movie, you get all the bells and whistles, but you also get this piece of artwork that is now yours. And our thing is like, if you're going to make like a short or a piece of animation using your character, that is our sequel. I will build the framing device around it. And then we get 5 of those shorts. Bang, we got another Killroy. Bang, we got another Killroy.
So it's crowdsourcing plus owning the IP.
Yes, yes. And what I thrilled to about that was the idea that like the art customer or consumer becomes the art collaborator, like in the next incarnation. You know, so it's not, I've had a lot of people, of course, people outside the field have very, informed or uninformed opinions about crypto and NFTs. And I hear the word scam a lot. I was like, art, like this ain't a scam. You're literally buying a movie. There's no scam here. You're getting money.
There's a physical piece of art. It's the same as buying a painting versus buying just the digital asset that people are referring to as scams.
Absolutely.
For anyone out there who doesn't know what we're talking about.
Absolutely. But if you were to buy this gorgeous piece, Batman piece, you can't then go make a Batman thing with it. Like you don't own
any rights to it. You just have the piece of art. And maybe it's a sign, maybe it's a limited edition.
Exactly. But in this case, it's like, it's yours. That character's yours, man. So that if you go off and make a short and then you're like, hey, this is our shirt. And I'm like, that's fantastic. It's going in our movie. You become part owner, part co-creator of that next movie. So you also like profit in it as well, if that's your sort of thing.
So there's a royalty aspect to it as well, the component.
So it just felt like on the business aspect, because some people are in this game because, of gains and shit. I'm in it because I'm like, this is a playground. And others are going to discover it. Like, and I've been talking about, like, ever since I started telling people we're taking Killroy out as an NFT, I got phone calls and texts from people I haven't heard from who work in the studio system. And I hadn't heard from in years. They don't give a fuck about me. But this was interesting to them. And they were like, we're watching. And I know that because if I can make a fucking nickel this way, look out. You're going to get 26 more versions of Terminator 2. As an NFT with all different variations to it.
This is a case study, man. And it's going to also open up for so many young creators out there, or not just young, meaning young in their careers or don't have the opportunities. And it's going to change the way Hollywood operates, where it's not just these bullshit fucking Jurassic Park movies. You're going to see the real creativity that's missing, in my opinion, come back. Those indie films. There's the way Clerks would have came out with that, right?
That's what appeals to me. That's what it all appeals to me. This feels like the world felt when we were making Clerks. Like, this is kind of an indie film movement. Like, the indie filmmaker, it's tough to find a place at the box office right now for any film, let alone a low budget film. The indie filmmaker has turned to YouTube and things like that. This is one more place to go where not only can you make your art, but potentially you can monetize your art, which is the dream of every indie artist. Right. We don't just dream about making this shit, putting it on a shelf, and people watching it. Like, we dream of making a living off of it. So if there's a way to go into this space and this works out with us, and then some smart kid is like, okay, if he could do that with Killroy, then heavens, we could do this with my indie film. It just like opens up one more playground for us to all go practice our craft at. So,
and you're also building a community, right? You're also building a fan base in a much different, more engaged way. Where did the number of 5,555 come from? Was it arbitrary, like just bullshit?
What a great question. Because originally they were like, let's do 6,666. And I was like, the internet being what it is.
It's so cliche for you. Like, come on. Like,
we will also be accused of like, of fucking Satanism, some dark cabal. I was like, just play it safe. Let's just leave the number 6 off the table. Let's just go for 5,555, and they were totally cool. That Secret have been absolutely wonderful partners, man. The Legendow folks are great. The guy is a wonderful person, and the idea that like they jumped in because they were like, this is going to help us show off our secret technology, our own blockchain technology. So far, it's been a really great relationship.
All right, let's give some alpha here. When's this thing coming out, man?
July 1st is when the drop is, and it's not expensive. Like, most NFTs are pricey. Ours is like a couple $100. It's kind of crazy.
So it's accessible to the average fan.
That was the idea. Secret was like, look, make it accessible to your people. Bring your people into the space with you. And so I was like, that's the idea.
Well, how's it going to work after the 5,555 people get to watch it and everyone else wants to watch it? How's that going to work?
then there'll be a secondary life for it as a physical film in the world. Like we're taking it
on
out.
Spirit Airlines flights.
Yeah. And
right.
people are like, what if I'm not an NFT person? I'll never be able to see this movie. I was like, that's not the case at all. Its first window of life is going to be here in the blockchain. You'll eventually see Killroy down the line for sure. If you're not a crypto person.
What else excites you in the Web3 space? What other technology gets your juices flowing?
Collaborative nature of the Web3 space really thrills me because my game doesn't get sharper, it gets blunter the older I get. So like even in something as simple as the Killroy sequel that we're talking about, having strong new filmmakers like in the work next to me is only good for me as a filmmaker who's aging out of the business. There's a good chance we could discover some cats and go on to do some cool shit the same way that like Roger Corman did back in the day. So like I dreamed before the career I had, and I love my career, but like the dream originally was like, oh, wouldn't it be great to do film co-ops like they do in like colleges and stuff where people who are outside of the arts can have a voice and real like Barton Finkey type of shit. And now we're at that place because it's so small and new and people are like, they don't know what to do with it yet, that you can be experimental without somebody above you being like, well, hold on. How are we supposed to make money?
It's a wild west.
Right now, it's just about the joy and the creativity.
I love it.
The community of Web3 like reminds me, it's not like, oh my God, this is brand new and has only existed here. It reminds me of the community that built up when the web first started, which I was also here for. Like exactly. I got online with the VSQ website in like late 95, early 96. So I was around at a time where you could say like, oh, I did the internet last night, and you meant you did everything. So now feels like
I finished the internet.
Yeah, I finished the internet. It was great.
Right.
Now feels like that time again, particularly in Web3.
It's the Wild West.
Yeah.
It's a new frontier, and that's what I do in the Web3 recruiting world. And I know we only have a couple of minutes here. So there's something I want to talk about relationship-wise. You know, you've worked with so many people, so many different areas, and we're not just talking actors, we're talking the business side, the production side, the craft services side. What is that key skill that somebody really needs to have to be successful in relationships from your perspective?
I mean, like, you know, everyone will tell you honesty, and absolutely honesty fucking works, but enthusiasm is what it is. I don't know any movie don't thrive on enthusiasm. Yeah, money fuels a budget, but like if you have money and no enthusiasm, no movie happens. Enthusiasm is what passes the idea along like a virus. So when you come to play, maintain that enthusiasm. Now, sometimes it's difficult when you work for other assholes. They control your day. So if a motherfucker yells at you on set or it trickles down like that, suddenly it don't seem as fun. It's tough to keep your enthusiasm. When we were making Killroy, we were largely making it with the kids in Sarasota at the Ringling College of Art and Design. And I would painstakingly take moments between takes to have long lectures where I would just be like, look, the fun that you're having here, the way you could come up to me and make suggestions and we joke around and stuff like that, that is what you should expect on every job. You won't find that on every job because that's not the way the business is working.
The world works.
You will need to maintain that enthusiasm in the face of assholes who make you feel like, why do I want to be in this business sometimes? With their lack of enthusiasm or with their tyrannical nature on set or something. But if you're on one of those sets, stay, absorb, learn, but know that you don't have to be there. And that is not the way the business should run. You have been on a set that shows you the way you should be treated going forward because this makes the job fun, keeps you enthusiastic. It's just smart thinking. If you have an enthusiastic cast and crew, the work is fucking better.
The quality's better, of course.
I'm constantly showing them the movie while we make it. I'll stop to be like, here's some shit I cut last night. Let's watch it all together. Because the more juice they are about the experience, the better the product's going to be overall. It becomes something special, not because the director believes in it, but because everybody believes in it. So that enthusiasm is the best thing that you can bring to a set and maintain at a set, and never let some motherfucker take it from you by being like, you know, oh, fucking go move a cable. You suck. You shouldn't be in the movie business. Bullshit. They shouldn't be in the movie business. They shouldn't be any in creative business if they're yelling at you. If people are yelling at you when you're making pretend for a living, unless they're yelling, get out of the way, a crane is falling, they are doing the fucking job wrong. So I'm telling you, man, it's keep whatever you feel, what brings you toward a thing in the first place is generally enthusiasm. You're like, I like this thing. And then you try to find out more about it. And then one day you get up the balls, the nerve, the fucking ovaries to try it yourself.
Love it.
You find like, I can do that thing. Never let any motherfucker take that away from you with their bad attitude. That's the most important piece of info I can give anybody.
I love it.
Working with every level across the board.
That's amazing. So Kev, let's bring it home here. My last question here. You look back on your life and there was those dark times when you were coming up, those dark times when you were struggling, a struggling filmmaker, and you started to make it. You got to a certain level of success and you needed to pull yourself forward. When you were on that operating table, when you thought your life was slipping away from you and you saw that light and you had to reach to it, what was it that pulled you up that you had to hold on to on the flip side of it? You're alive with us now. Gratitude for your career and your family. Kevin Smith, what is your compass in life? What is your North Star?
I feel like I got a bunch to say, and believe me, I don't think it's all important.
And your publicist is texting me and calling me?
Never mind that person. But I feel like I got a lot to say. And again, I don't feel like it's the most important shit in the world. Some of it's just about fucking Star Wars. But like as a human being, we're gifted this one thing above all the other species on this planet. The gift of self-expression. You can tell people exactly what is on your mind and in your heart in this world. Something an animal can't do. You look in their eyes, you can project. We can tell each other, I'm hurt, I'm happy, I need, I feel, I love, I hate. You know, that's that type of communication a lot of us take for granted. I feel like while I've got breath in me, I got a chance to tell people what's on my head and what's on my heart. And most of it is, I try to make it amusing so it's not so tough for them to take. So when I was laying there on the table, I was like, oh man, I won't get to make like Jay and Silent Bob reboot. I mean, more importantly, I was like, if I die tonight, Yoga Hosers is the last movie I made. I got to get back up. So the idea of like, there's more to do, the more to say is what kind of gets me up like every morning. And I hope it stays that way until I drop dead doing the job. I never want to retire. I don't want to be sitting somewhere thinking about how I used to do a thing. I want to do what Robert Altman did. Robert Altman left this world off a movie set, man. He died doing what he loved. Give me some of that. That'll be great.
Awesome. Kevin Smith, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I want everyone to check out the Killroy NFT that drops on the 1st, which is coming up this Friday. Find Kevin. You can find them across social media. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. You know where to find out more at thepodcast.com. Follow us on all the social media channels. Thank you. The great fucking Kevin Smith on the podcast. Take care, my friend.
Adam, you absolutely rock. Thank you for having me.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search The Podcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepodcast.com.